The instruments to redress this are there. It's just there's no political will. So what do? You write into your member of Congress that you support House Resolution 107, and you better impeach it. And if Obama goes to, well, he already has. He's gone to war against Libya without congressional authorization. And if he does it, he'll threaten. If he does it in Iran, he's going to be impeached. And it says, well, but that doesn't bring jobs. Well, listen, I'm in favor of economic prosperity, but some things are worth more than just dollars. And it's our own dignity, our only right to govern ourselves. It's checks and balances. If we don't have that, all the money in the world you can't take with you, in your dignity once you have your epitaph there.
Well, as you know, sir, it is. Sure, it is liberty, though, that brings the prosperity. Every time you get rid of liberty, the prosperity disappears.
No, absolutely. Or where it goes is to those with the crony capitalism is where it goes. You're exactly right. Some prosper, but not because of their industry and ambition and creativity, but because they manipulate the political system in their favor. That's the TARP money, that's the entitlement programs, that's all these military, boondoggles out there spending trillions of dollars, on trying to defend against an asteroid that might hit the next time Halley Comet comes around.
American.
That's not liberty. Liberty is working your own skill, it's your Thomas Edison types. That's liberty and prosperity.
It is. AmericanFreedomAgenda.org. We'll tell you about his latest book as well. Bruce Fein's our guest. He is the Chief Policy Advisor for Ron Paul. Stay with us. Bruce Fein, constitutional lawyer, author. His latest book, American Empire Before the Fall, is joining us. This is a short segment with Bruce, long segment coming up, and we'll get into the whole IRS, domestic checkpoints, government building up for war with the people question, and then your calls. But your letter to the New York Times got published. I'm surprised they did that. But they also had an article about the FBI creating fake terror threats and basically false flags. So I guess the New York Times understands that they don't start telling the truth they're going to lose all their readers. I guess the market is having an effect. I noticed Congress is talking about a contempt citation against Holder over Fast and Furious. Now we learn it's hand grenades being shipped down there to blame the Second Amendment. Just a lot of things happening, but tell folks about your letter, because it breaks down this chain of events that we seem to be going in, that empires like elephants go to a certain place to die.
Yeah. Well, the letter really pivoted off of really a good article by friend Charlie Savage, a reporter of the New York Times, pointing out how Obama was unilaterally circumventing Congress and domestic issues, whether it's the student loan program or a whole host of things that he does through the EPA or otherwise, because he can't get them through Congress. And I pointed out in the letter, well, that's one thing, but he doesn't even make an attempt, even a shadow of an effort to consult Congress with regard to national security matters. And the point of the letter was to show this is not a unique phenomenon with Obama, although he sort of reached the high water mark that ever since World War II, beginning with Harry Truman's unilateral war against North Korea, Eisenhower had unilateral defense treaties or executive agreements with Spain. We had the Gulf of Tonkin resolution with Johnson, and we had with regard to President Clinton, he couldn't get a war resolution against Bosnia, so he did it unilaterally. And we have Bush with waterboarding in the Iraq War, and now we have Obama with Libya and claiming he can go anywhere in the world and kill any American citizen he wants with a Predator drone if he thinks that they're an imminent threat. And that this is a very grave threat to who we are as a country. I'd say the glory of the Republic, in the words of John Quincy Adams, was liberty. We didn't go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Our influence abroad was the influence of example and having a true dedication to due process and liberty at home. And now we've swapped that American Republic, where liberty is our glory, to one where empire and the glory is domination and permanent warfare. And that's where we are, today. And just think, Alex, you read the newspapers, we got troops, chasing the Lord's Resistance Army in Africa, they're in Central African Republic, and we're thinking about invading Syria or dropping bombs there. And then we have a new escalation of Predator drones in Yemen. And we still have troops, in Afghanistan.
They're launching drones all over the U.S. Did you see where they're ordering hundreds of armored mobile pillboxes for the highways and 450 million 40 caliber bullets? And they've got TSA now at checkpoints just everywhere. What's going on?
Alex, it's a brilliant observation you made because it shows how prescient James Madison was when he said, all history teaches that the instruments that are developed to fight danger from abroad are invariably employed at home to crush domestic liberty. And that's exactly what we're seeing. All these things that, we have to develop all these weapons because we need to keep the battlefield, 9,000 miles away. But now you're making the battlefield America. And indeed, that is what Senator Lindsey Graham, when he voted in support of this National Defense Authorization Act, that entrusted the president with authority to use the military to take any of us at any time to Guantanamo and say, hey, we're providing some material support to a coalition, a member of Al-Qaeda, is that Lindsey Graham said, the battlefield used to be abroad, but we're bringing the battlefield here to the United States, which is in a sense saying, hey, we got martial law here. And that's what invariably happens. You think that you can keep these foreign instruments in foreign lands, but that's not how the law works and the precedent works. It comes back to haunt us right here. You're right, predator drones, surveillance drones, checkpoints, everything is subordinated to safety. And that's one of the important things that we need to remember, that this oftentimes proverb says you can never be too safe. Yeah, you can be too safe. If the reason why you're safe is you've locked everybody up, then you've destroyed the whole purpose of having your country. You've destroyed liberty. I don't want that safety. You have to take some risk in life for liberty to have any oxygen to it.
Sure, and any government that can totally surveil to, quote, keep you safe, historically it always becomes the ultimate destroyer. I mean, look at government killing. Major universities, the University of Hawaii did a study on democide, government killing its citizens. Non-military deaths, 20th century, 262 million people governments killed, with the communists and Hitler and Pol Pot. I mean, government is the biggest unnatural killer and the biggest wrecker of anything out there. It's the dangerous thing. As our forebear said, it's what you want to keep locked up. It's the danger. Stay there, sir. We're going to come right back. Long segment coming up. We'll get into the rest of what you see happening and Ron Paul. Stay with us. All right, we're going back to Bruce Fein here in just a moment. I wanted to read to you a few of the headlines at Infowars.com. The ultimate green bombshell. New study finds wind farms cause actual climate change. That's Patrick Henningsen. They also don't work very well. They've bankrupted Spain. They're a big part of that. International scientific order needed to facilitate the big die-off. That's a quote, top UN advisor. By the way, that's in Reuters. They're saying, the collectivists are saying, shut off the economy, bankrupt things because humans are bad. Post-industrial world, you cannot make up this magnitude of craziness. NSI... instructional video says public photography is terrorism. CBS runs defense for everyone's a terrorist, FBI flyers. This is the twilight zoning of America. And also, trail of death. Breitbart coroner turns up dead, arsenic poisoning. But the police are saying that they don't think he committed suicide, so they are looking at foul play. And by the way, it turns out it is the coroner that did Breitbart. So, wow. Twilight zone indeed. And we've got some other crazy news up there. When they passed the NDAA and Obama signed it, when he said he wouldn't sign it, and then we learned he demanded the provisions be there. Still, even I was pinching myself. But we ask ourselves, why is the elite able to do this? And I think it's the dependency. They know if they get a giant dependent class, the American people, one way or the other, around half are dependent on a government contract, government welfare, something. How do we ever extricate ourselves from this when around half the people out there are dependent? And I understand they took your money, blew it, and then keep you dependent because of Social Security. I mean, I understand they forced you into it. But the point is, how do we ever get out of it? Do things collapse? Or in the process of collapsing, do we go through an authoritarian nightmare as they try to keep it going? Bruce Fein, constitutional law scholar, best-selling author, top policy advisor to Ron Paul, is our guest. What do we do about this dependency? I mean, close to 50 million on food stamps. They're talking about the new bailout being a student loan bailout. Sure. I mean, we're going to go bankrupt. How much money can we spend? Now,
entitlement programs over $2 trillion, a year. and that's just, it's not sustainable. And everybody's got to, everyone's got to live in a much more austere fashion. And just remember, if we cut back for everybody, that means you pay less taxes, so you have more of your own money, to spend. Now, we do, as any nation would have a safety net, but the safety net ought to be really the bare necessities. But otherwise, and I say this with all sincerity, Alex, in some sense, the government deprives you of your own dignity by making you dependent. Because your real character, your real mettle, your real self-esteem comes from struggle, from making it on your own, from overcoming difficulties at birth or otherwise. And if you've never faced those challenges, you can never develop true character. In some sense, you become stunted. And so it's really, in my view, sort of a disability to be born, a son or child of a Bloomberg, and you never have any stresses. You're going to be a very soft person. And what gives you the strength to go through the peaks and valleys of life and stay, afloat and demonstrate your character is precisely the ability, to overcome struggle. And the government deprives you. They make you into a dwarf when they just say, oh, don't worry, you're not accountable for anything. We understand how soft and weak you are. Oh, here's the money. Here it is that makes it all right for you. And that's poison, to individual dignity.
Well, I agree with you. It's poison. And dovetailing with that is the report last week where the Labor Department was going to ban, and I read the regulations on air, any basic farm work with, quote, raw materials, grass, hay, seeds, eggs. I mean, that is the family farm, and I've worked on a family farm. I've been sent to our family farm on summers, one time for a whole year of school. I worked on ranches for a large animal vet. All of the youth work, you have a good time doing it. You end up making money as well, and that's how you learn the next generation. That shows this dangerous collectivism where the government was going to ban farm chores. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah, it was. I think if you had any electricity, even on a drill, you couldn't be doing it on the farm. And then they said, well, they were worried because it wasn't just always on your own family. Because I had relatives out in Lamar, Colorado, too. And so I grew up there rowing hose of corn and wheat and whatever, getting all these thickets in your ankles. But you learned, and you learned the discipline, and you got some money to go buy Pepsi Cola at the time. And sometimes it was your family, sometimes it was an uncle, sometimes it was an aunt or some more distant relative. But the idea that you want to make that illegal when we're trying to cultivate the opposite, which is good work habits, it's got the world upside down here. And again, it's this idea that everything in life has to be absolutely safe. You never do anything that has the tiniest degree of risk. I say that's the curse. That's the formula for decadence. That's the formula for effeteness. That's the formula for softness. You don't do things that are crazy, but, you got to take some risk. And prudent risk, and you have to be accountable for your acts.
Well, look at photographs, Bruce. Look at photographs of any race, creed, religion. You look at photographs of Americans across the board from 100 years ago, even 60, 70 years ago, people had more electricity in their eyes. They looked dignified. They dressed nicer, even if they were poor. They wouldn't put up with being pushed around. And now you look at people, I go out in public, myself included. I'm a slob compared to my grandfathers. I'm weak. I don't know how to fix things like they did. I don't have that joy of cleaning things and doing things that even my dad, who really grew up on a farm, has. And I just see people degenerating.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's like American Gothic, where's that picture, small but dignified, not ornate, but quite tidy and disciplined. And that's exactly what, our culture says. It's becoming a decadent. And it isn't just how many Facebook pages you've got and how much Twitter you can do. It's your own character and your own discipline that's at stake here. And again, we go back to this idea that we need to make everybody safe from themselves. Can you imagine, our regulations